Morning, Paula. It's great to meet you, and I'm so happy to have you do this interview with us.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks for inviting me.
No problem. I was hoping maybe we could just start with you. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
My name is Paula Kirman, and I am a freelance writer and editor. As well, I also do photography, videography, communications work of all different kinds, all on a freelance contract basis. And I'm also a community organizer with a number of organizations and nonprofits in Edmonton.
Okay, that sounds amazing. I would love it if you mentioned that there's several organizations that you work with. I don't know if you want to pick one, or if you would like to tell us a little bit about a few different organizations that you're working with.
I've been with a number of organizations off and on over the years. One of them that I'm with, I've been with for quite some time and I'm still with currently, is called the Edmonton Coalition Against War and Racism. And we periodically organize peace marches and events, particularly relating to Canada's foreign policy in other countries. And we believe that every country has a right to self-determination, and we want Canada to have an anti-war government. I'm also very involved with, because I work in communications on a freelance basis, I'm very involved with a number of initiatives concerning precarious work and media activism as well. For a number of years, I've been a member organizer with the Canadian Freelance Union, which is a community chapter of Unifor. Unifor, for those who may not know, is Canada's largest private sector union. And there's the community chapter connects freelancers from all across Canada to advocate for our rights and to give us a voice in the labor movement. And I've recently stepped into a role with the CFU as the director for the Prairie Provinces as well. And also on my own, when I saw, I was a little bit later coming to activism. I was in my 30s. And I was really looking for groups to connect with. And I actually had to go online and find groups to connect with, find like-minded individuals. And I found this really interesting when I started getting involved more and seeing that the mainstream media wasn't really doing a lot of coverage of a lot of the wonderful progressive events and protests that happen in the city. Or when there was coverage, it wasn't really thorough coverage. So I began photographing and filming events and just kind of putting them up there on YouTube. And I started a website. It's now called radicalcitizenmedia.com, where it's kind of reaching out to other organizations and other activists all over the world to show them, hey, you know, this is Edmonton, and this is what's going on here in Edmonton. And also showing people here in Edmonton that things are happening and people have connected to activism as a result of this. So kind of a variety of things keeping me busy over the years.
That sounds amazing. I'm going to have to attach a link to a petition that we have going to the Canadian government, requesting that they give the new ombudsperson better powers to enforce Canadian standards on Canadian mining companies that are working overseas. It sounds a little bit like some of the work that you're doing campaigning the Canadian government as well, as far as peace initiatives. Yeah. So it sounds like your role in some of these organizations is you're the instigator, and in other ones you've just found those organizations and joined.
I'm kind of the resident activist historian. I would say.
Okay.
Event documentator. Documentarian, I think is the proper word for that. Because now a lot of the organizations, they have actual records visually and in video of what happened, and something to look back on and to share with others. So, I mean, and the activism that happens in Edmonton is really, needs to be looked at as part of the rich fabric of history of the city. And it's something where, there's an event and it's a couple of hours and it comes and goes and then it's over. And then, well, how do people remember? How do you keep this in people's consciousness? And I find that doing documentary work has really been a boost to that.
That is fascinating. I'm working on a little initiative myself about, I'm calling it After the Protest. Just trying to, especially for younger people who are just new to getting involved, going to a protest for the first time, and then they don't really know where to go after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's always wonderful to show up with your signs. Yes. And chant and march, and there's that energy, and it's a great media op. But what happens afterwards? How do you keep people connected and engaged? That's always the challenge.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that more someday.
For sure.
So you mentioned a little bit about how you first got involved. How do you stay motivated?
I really enjoy what I do, so I think that in and of itself is a motivation. I've always been interested in issues of social justice and human rights, and it's really great to be able to make a tangible mark on progressive movements in Edmonton, and to just be a part of something greater, and to be able to connect with so many wonderful people and be able, who are all trying to make a better world. And I think that's what keeps me motivated, especially in times when things aren't quite going as well as we would like them to in politics and in society. Just to know that we have the power, we have the ability to make a difference, and if we just give up, then all of the work that we've done up until this point has been for nothing. So, thinking about our own society and thinking about future generations, what kind of world are we leaving to our children and our grandchildren, and our friends' children and grandchildren?
Yeah,
I think those are things that keep me motivated.
That's fantastic. I was wondering if you might be interested in talking a little bit about some of the things going on in the Jewish community in the city right now with some, I believe there was some graffiti at one of the synagogues.
Anti-Semitism has been on the rise over the last few years, and it's very, very disturbing. It's disturbing to me as a Jewish person, of course, and it should be disturbing to anybody who cares about justice and human rights, because it's really frightening to see hatred against identifiable groups on the rise again, and especially against for me as a Jewish person, like I said, it is incredibly frightening. I know Jewish people who are, they're not used to this kind of thing because it hadn't been that bad, and then suddenly there's this wave of it, and I think it's just related to this overall feeling that it's okay to hate suddenly, like it's okay to have to be brazen about these unacceptable beliefs, and to just and this belief that there's tolerance for that kind of thing. Friends of mine who are just totally not used to this, like they're afraid to be identifiably Jewish in public. And some of us have the privilege where we can just hide our Stars of David or any outward symbolism, and we can just blend in, which totally is privilege to be able to do that. But I choose not to, because I know so many people who are part of identifiably oppressed groups who can't do that for one reason or another, and they can't and they won't. And I feel that it's imperative of me to be outspoken and visibly Jewish, just in solidarity with them, and also in solidarity against what is happening. And you are correct, there has been graffiti on Jewish locations in the city, and not just here, but in other parts of Canada.
Yes.
And yeah, it is something that we should all be concerned about, because we need to fight hate in all forms, and we need to work together to do that, regardless of what communities we're from.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on that. You know, I've been watching that in the news, and I think you're right, that has started to become a trend. You know, suddenly these kind of attitudes that we all knew existed, but they knew that they were unacceptable, and they held back in expressing them. All of a sudden now people don't seem to have any fear about expressing them.
Yeah, I think that stems back to what I was saying, is that suddenly there's, with, you know, particularly with what's happening with our neighbors to the south, suddenly it became, the unacceptable has become acceptable.
Yes. Yeah. This question might be out of left field. Who do you look up to?
Who do I look up to? Oh my goodness. There's so many. When I was growing up, something that influenced me greatly was the 60s folk music that my mother listened to. My parents couldn't understand why I suddenly wanted to go to peace marches and do all these things. And it's like, I grew up on a steady diet of Joan Baez and Bob Dylan and Buffy St. Marie and Peter, Paul and Mary. And that has really influenced me. I really look up to Joan Baez, who's like almost 80 and still as outspoken as ever, and Buffy St. Marie, who is so full of energy and so direct with her messages, and I've had the privilege of seeing her in concert a number of times and meeting her a couple of times. Here in Edmonton, there are numerous activists who have been at it for quite some time, and they're always there, you know, no matter what the cause or how bad the weather is. You know, they're just always there. And there's so, like, the Raging Grannies are a huge influence and inspiration to me. I was aware of the Raging Grannies from the time I was a teenager, and my father took me to a protest, just kind of out of the blue, with something having to do with public transportation, raising the fees. And the Raging Grannies were there, and I was like, wow, I want to be a Raging Granny when I grow up. I mean, that is just, and there they are, and you know,
they're still raging.
And they're still raging, and many of them are still the ones who I saw, you know, back then, some of them, and they are just, you know, just incredible. Like, you know, if the Raging Grannies show up, they mean business.
That's right. Yeah. Definitely. Now, you've talked about a whole bunch of different issues that you work on behalf of. Is there one issue that is, like, you are most passionate about? Is there something that is your real pet cause?
It's interesting you should ask that, because something that I'm finding is that there are so many intersections between a lot of issues. For example, like, there are like it's wonderful to see so many young people so engaged about environmental issues now. Seeing them come out in the tens of thousands to march up for awareness of climate change, and it was just this past spring or this past fall, has was just amazing. As somebody who has taken part in a number of those events over the years, organized by really great activists, and we got maybe at its peak maybe a couple hundred people to show up. So that's really exciting. So we kind of see that as an opportunity to show that there are intersections between the environment and peace. For example, war is one of the worst environmental catastrophes that could happen to a place. There are intersections between pretty much between the environment and Indigenous rights. There are intersections between peace and women's rights, because in a lot of countries where there is war, women are being violated by soldiers from occupying forces. There's just, there are so many intersections. So I just like to say that just in general, human rights and social justice are my jam, that.
I really like that answer because it is true. I think everybody in the world is starting to wake up to intersectionality and really see that, you can fight for women's rights, but that means that you're fighting racism. That means you're fighting for peace. There's so many interconnected pieces there. So that's amazing. Those are all my questions. So is there anything that you wish you could shout out?
I just hope everybody out there is keeping safe and keeping healthy. And we will get through this. And I hope to see you on the street sometime soon.
That's a perfect ending. Thank you so much.
Thank you.